Well, hello everyone, and I love in the chat box says hello Idaho. And I think we have friends from Utah here as well. And I'm coming to you from Michigan today. So we're like quite doing the cross country thing, which I love. Today will be kind of informal. Feel free to pop questions into the chat box. We'll hold a lot of our questions to the end just to make sure we get through our content. But please feel free to ask, and Rebecca's going to help me moderate that. So I am coming to you from My Creative Potential, which is an arts education initiative in Michigan. And we're going to talk about our professional development resources. And we have two different things we're going to go over. We're going to talk about My Creative Potential, like where we're at in the state of Michigan, as far as kind of our statewide reach. And then also the Maya resources, which are these amazing tools that you are going to love as educators. Like they are like just an amazing toolbox of things for you. So I'm Amy Lynn Pobans. I was in the classroom for 25 years, visual arts, taught K through 12, college, alternative education. There's literally not a grade band that I have not touched. And then I'm also a science educator as well. I am recently retired, but I've been doing this work with My Creative Potential for about 10, 15 years now. So in many different aspects. And now I'm finding myself able to come and do things like this with you guys, which I just love. But they're like, if you ask me a question, I will have an opinion probably and have something to share out. And I'll try to, excuse me, I'm struggling a little bit today with my voice. I probably have like a resource I can share with you or those types of things. And I will talk about my teaching practice over time as well and integrate the resources and explain how I have even shifted in my use of how I use them in the classroom. All right, so real quickly in the chat box, if you could just put your organization, grade level, content, and then I'm curious as to what your relationship to the arts was like when you were a student. So think back to your K through 12 years and just like a couple sentences, but I'm just curious as to where we're at. I'll type my response to you guys as well. Great. Thank you for everyone as you're working on your replies here. Ooh, 3D artist, love that. Ooh, violin, love that. And our arts resources are all art. So dance, music, visual art, theater, media arts. So we have all of those things in our suite of assessment resources. Love that. Oh, band in sixth grade. Great. Some teachers who inspired you guys. I love that. Nice. Oh, fiber artist. Very cool. All right, so you can keep them coming if you still have some things to add to the chat, but that helps me know who's in our audience today. Um, all of the experiences in the chat right now are fairly positive experiences. Please know that some of us come to a place where we didn't have a positive interaction when we were younger. And then that may have shifted or a new interaction changed our opinion, but that can look really different. And I know that's something you're probably all like working on in your classroom is creating that safe place for students to really feel like they can be creative and express themselves in whatever art form you're teaching. So thank you for sharing. And let's see here. Sorry, there we go. All right, so let me give you a little background on my creative potential. And I'm going to preface this by saying that When we started as Michigan Arts Education, Instruction, and Assessment Project. And we actually started with coming up with a blueprint that we will talk to you that outlines like what the most amazing arts program in a district could look like. And then that led into the development of the assessments, which are really like the heart of the work. And from there, we've really, in the past couple years, grown and it just had the opportunity to create some amazing tools. And we found that the Maya project, that Michigan Art Education Instruction and Assessment project, is just a smidge of a mouthful, just a little bit. So we have kind of rebranded under the My Creative Potential umbrella, but also our work has expanded, and I'll explain that to you in just a moment. So, we are a collective impact initiative, and we're working to advance access to high quality arts education in the state of Michigan. And we are happy to share out across the world anybody who is interested in this work. But we really look at like what is the access kids have to the arts and how do we help that be part of the fabric of our community and really create vibrant communities. And that relates to our quality of life, right? Wherever we live, what that looks like. It's like our pipeline to having arts in our communities, which is something that's really important to many of us on this call today. So the work includes statewide data collection, regional arts education networks, the arts education instruction assessment and continuous improvement resources, and strategic partnerships. If you would like to follow us, we would love to have you follow us. Like there is a wonderful newsletter. It will likely include things that will apply to you no matter where you're located. It will talk about like work within Michigan, but then we also have another portion of that newsletter that comes out that talks exactly about the tools that I'm going over with you today. So you're welcome to subscribe and sign up for that. Everything I share with you today is at mycreativepotential.org. So if you go there as your landing spot, everything that we talk today, you can like launch off of that website to get to all of those different resources. So even if you want to follow us on social media or you want the newsletters, if you scroll to the bottom of that page, you will find that link. So I think that will be really helpful for everyone. Right. So within the work we do at My Creative Potential, I told you we've really grown in those capacities. We have three big buckets. So one is the policy, funding, and engagement, the K through 12 arts education, and we're going to spend a lot of time here today. And then working with community arts education partners to increase that access for kiddos. Within that, we have this new data network platform that I'll briefly talk about and you can investigate later, but it's super cool and it helps to map out resources and it's kind of like a dating website for like where are my teaching artists and my community organizations? Where can I take my kids for field trips? I'm a community org who's willing to help me teach some summer classes for kids to engage in learning outside of the classroom. So it's pretty cool. And we're really thinking about that arts education ecosystem. And I love that term. Like, what does the arts education ecosystem look like in your community, in your region, and in your state? And this becomes really important over here. You've got a couple friends here from your education departments in your state that those dollars really support the work that you're doing in your classroom. So it's important to have policy and legislation that puts arts at the center as well. So really brief because we're going to spend a lot of time on the assessments today, but just so you know, in Michigan, we have an initiative called Growing Together. It would not surprise me if you had something similar in your state. It's often used with your like economic development office and so forth at the state level. And we are working in Michigan on building vibrant communities, building our best workforce, fueling the creative economy, and supporting health and wellness. So probably four big overarching ideas that apply to you no matter where you're coming to us from. Everything that we do then aligns with that work. So we are talking in a common language with people at the state level. We produce three publications, which are pretty fascinating, and I'll share some really quick tips from some of them for you today. So one is the My Creative State Report, and we were able to produce the first one since 2011 last year, and we are working on annually producing this. So we are all able to tell those stories to people that we work with in the school systems and people at the legislative level, but we're all thinking about where are we at in the arts programming and access to arts in our state, and then what are the decisions we can move forward with together to increase that access for kids. We have a creative roadmap, which is a statewide action agenda, so we're all on that same page. And then we have a creative toolkit for helping us think about how we advance arts education. This is a link, and this is again off that website, but it's a My Creative State report. And I'm going to share a couple interesting findings from you and also some key advocacy points. Rebecca shared with me that advocacy is one of those things that are really critical to the work that you're doing and aligns with some of the initiatives you have going. The document here, research-based, and it's probably like 80 pages. The first 20 pages-ish is like a summary. And so the excerpts I'm about to share with you are excerpts out of that first like 20 pages that give a broad brushstroke as to where we're at. So we want to start talking to people outside of just like our fellow arts friends, right? Like, how do we talk to other people about the arts and why they're so important to our community? So when we're looking at the workforce, here's a great quote to know. Creativity is among the top 5 applied skills sought by business leaders, according to the Conference Board's Ready to Innovate report, with 72% of business leaders saying creativity is of high importance when hiring. So a lot of the dollars that support your arts programming come from businesses within your community. It's important to know that they're looking for these as far as job aspects. So even if your students aren't directly going into the arts, you know the skills that you are teaching them will help them be successful in whatever career they are entering the workforce in. Another really interesting thing that's happening in the state of Michigan is they're struggling to recruit people to different areas of the state. And they're finding that the more vibrant the community and the more filled with arts it is, the more people want to come to the jobs. People are not just looking for that salary, they're looking for their quality of life within the community as well. Arts are an economic powerhouse. Love this slide. So the nation's art and entertainment sector, nonprofit and commercial, it's 4.4% of the nation's economy. And to me, I'm like, okay, 4.4. Tell me what that means. We're larger than construction, transportation, and agriculture. To me, that's a little bit mind-blowing and a great stat to share out with people. It's also a $1.2 trillion industry that supports 4.9 million jobs. So pretty big numbers there, friends. So nice work. Pat on the back. We're doing great. Um, and then let's talk about like the healthy part, right? Especially since COVID, we're all looking at health and wellness, how we maintain that in our lifestyles. So here's some fun facts for you. Citizens who regularly engage in an arts project for as little as 45 minutes to reduce their stress, their hormone cortisol, and extends their life by a decade. So that's like a huge like correlation there that we're not always talking about. It is prescribed by doctors, museum, and arts environmentalists to alleviate loneliness, dementia, and many other physical and mental health concerns. So you're probably in your community starting to have these conversations about like how do we connect art and wellness and put that forward facing. Sure, you have an excuse me, an SEO component that you're working on as well. All right, so I'm going to do this throughout our presentation just because I want to see what you guys are thinking about. So what else would you add just with those 5 brief slides? So the arts, they are, they do. What's a 1-sentence response to that? What else do the arts do for you, for your students, for your community? They bring me joy. Love that. Express their individual selves. Very true. A lot of people find their community in your arts classrooms. Enhance creativity beyond the arts. Love that. Academic skills. Love that connection as well. And research does back that up. Community and self. Community. So important. Thank you. Keep those coming in the chat box. And I will try to show you some of the research resources as well so that you can refer back to them as you're having some of these conversations in case you ever need like the direct, here's the research that like gives validation to my saying this. So I'll show you where those documents live as well. Oh, the hard topics in this world, those are great. Thank you guys. Sorry, sometimes I lose my cursor and it won't. There we go. It will advise. It will advance for me. Sorry. All right, so let's explore what the arts mean for you, your region, and your state, not just Michigan, as we strive for our creative potential. Okay, so we are working on state resources, but also regional arts networks. And so I thought I'd give you just a little bit of glimpse into that work. In the state of Michigan, we have regions that are aligned with our MEDC. So, like our Economic Development Corporation, they're like state regions. Don't know if you guys have that where you are at, but it would not surprise me if you do. Within those regions, we are creating smaller arts networks that support each region, bringing together arts educators, K through 12, 14, along with community arts organizations and teaching artists. So instead of working in silos, we're trying to bring them together for both professional development, for collaboration, and looking at those access pieces. So when I talk about the arts networks, that's what I'm referring to, and that's just a example of what that would look like in the state. So they consist of intermediate school districts, regional representatives, teaching artists, community arts providers, and fine and performing arts venues. And so we are looking at a model where we convene semi-annually or annually within those regions, bringing all of those people together for like a big in-person type of event. And then we have some smaller events that connect people throughout the year so that we're always in communication with each other, supporting the work that we're doing. So Artlook Michigan, I'm going to give you some messy slides in a second. That is our data collection. It's designed by Parliament, which is a company in Chicago. And this is that like dating platform that I told you where we can start to look at all sorts of different things. One of the pieces, if you're a school district, and I'll show you in just a second. So this is what it looks like. You can go to Artlook Michigan right off the main page that I shared with you, the mycreativepotential.org. I will give you a couple caveats. Our data cycle is a year behind. So like if you're going to look for data, you're going to want to look under the 24-25 tab. The 25-26 community partners and teaching artists automatically roll over, but a school district has to log in and update their information for it to show. You'll also know in Artlook, Michigan, we did a soft launch in the spring and we are just in the process of building this. So this is a very, very new platform for us. We're about the third state to have this type of a resource available. Okay, messiest slide ever. It breaks every rule about slide development, but I wanted to get all of these things on one slide just to give you an idea of what this looks like. For a school district, you self-report, school self-report, teaching artist self-report, community partners self-report. A school district would look like this. It's going to talk about like the student ratio, student teaching ratio, what the facilities are, who the arts instructors are, what type of space you have, the courses that you teach. And if you were to scroll down farther, you'll be able to see the arts partners in the community that you collaborate with currently. Both you and your community partner can pull off a report to then share that out with your Board of Education, with your principals. You can use it as part of your continuous improvement plan, set goals for yourself, and annually review this, which is really a wonderful thing to do. Organizations look like this. They would have their contact information, and then you can see all of the programs that are available. And then if you're a teaching artist, you'll have a whole section that can link off to your social media and the different courses and so forth that you teach as well. So it's a really robust system. And how this works is if you want to bring in somebody into your community, you can look for the organization or the teaching artist. Come in, you can look for field trips out. They can find you. If you're an organization, knowing who the current art teacher is can be really challenging. So like, and it's like the phone trees, you've got to have those phone trees out there. It's awful. So they like call the school district and can't actually figure out how to get a hold of you, especially if they like hide your email address on the district website. So this is a really great place for someone to be like, hey, we have this person who's coming in for a residency and we would love for them to work with students, and they can reach out to you directly. And the same for teaching artists. So it's just a really wonderful way to like connect everyone in the field. Okay, so think about for a second and put a like sentence in the chat box. How are schools, teaching artists, and community partners working together in your region and your state? So just think about that for just a minute. And like I go throughout the state of Michigan working in the different regions, and there's varying levels. In a lot of cases, they're very siloed, and we're really thinking about how we support people to come together to have those collaboration conversations. And this will help, Rebecca, she can kind of see what's happening in her state, what's happening in our communities. Like, let's just pause for a second and think about that. Oh, I love your honesty. Very cool. Yeah, giving students a chance to be heard in their community and for them to be able to showcase their skills is really cool. It's also a heavy lift sometimes. Like sometimes you feel like I'm already doing all these things in the classroom, probably teaching like seven different preps. So how do I add to this? Maybe you're teaching like 1,500 students, all of those things are possible depending on the hat that you wear. Love live theater. That's very cool. Having public venues for students is fantastic. Nice. And I think it's really important. The friend that shared out that like they're not sure who their teaching artists are in their community or who would be willing to come in, like that's something that we can work on together. How do we solve that problem where we really have students have access to people who are practicing this? Because hearing from older people in the community who have been down that path is really inspirational for kids. So like how do we start working on those things? And not going to solve all of those questions in like one 45-minute session here, but there are things that you can take back to your teams of people in the school and say, like, I'm really thinking about this and what might our next steps be? Thanks. Okay, so I told you already, you can sign up for our newsletter. Love to have you. Anybody is welcome to sign up for it. Lots of different resources that are available. Heather is amazing. She is our director and she just does this incredible job. She's a dance background and really strong in like self-regulation and SEL skills. We do have a social media. If you're a Facebook friend or the Blue Sky, you are welcome to follow us. We do postings there, and a lot of it is relevant no matter where you're located. Okay, so now we're going to start to dive into the teaching resources. This is going to be lots of fun. And please, as I go through, you can write questions in the chat box and we can come back to them. Or if Rebecca thinks it's really important for me to pause, I'm happy to do that as we go. This is going to feel a smidgen like a fire hose. Today, we are just doing kind of a big picture because there are so many different tools available to you. So just let it sink in. You have this recorded. And honestly, the best thing to do is to visit the website later and to dive into them individually or to meet together in like a PLC type of group or with a colleague and talk about them together. Like that would be I prefer to work collaboratively. So if you have that opportunity available to you, that is great. You can share this. It's not a secret with anyone you want. I always tell student teachers about this resource because I remember what it was like to go into the classroom with not a whole lot of resources behind me. So okay, so we are going to talk about the blueprint to a quality arts program, a program review tool. So we are now using the Artlook platform to do like a self-assessment and alignment with the blueprint, but we do have like a kind of paper pencil version that anyone could do, including friends in Iowa. And yes, we will review the program review tool. I saw that pop up. So no matter where you are in Utah or we're Idaho. Yes, Idaho? Idaho and Utah. Okay. I'm like, and sometimes I mix the eyes up. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. And then we will talk about the 360 performance assessments. They are amazing. Some professional learning, excuse me, and then what is new. Oh my gosh, Rebecca, you make me so happy. Okay, so the first here is the Michigan Blueprint of a Quality Arts Education Program. This is a research-based document that goes through all of the different things that you would want if you were in a school district. And this is when I first fell in love with Maya, is when I saw this tool. Because usually people give me tools, I'm like, they didn't think of this, they didn't do that. This is, and I want to like redesign the whole thing. And this, I'm like, oh my gosh, the most amazing people on the planet must have written this. Like, it is so comprehensive. So it talks about student access, facilities and resources, policies and accountability, connections, your professional learning and instructional support, community and cultural collaboration, and program planning, review, and improvement. So those are the different sections in there. When you use the program review tool, it asks you to reflect on the things found in this blueprint document. So, for instance, like it will talk about like student ratio, teacher student ratio when you're thinking about student access. It will talk about how many minutes they get. I'm sure you are well aware it is very difficult to be very proficient at a musical instrument if you get to see them for like 30 minutes every 2 weeks, possibly in grades 4 and 6, and then maybe again 8, right? So, if you are looking for the research to say this is why students need more consistent like access to my classes, like they need to be at a higher level of instructional minutes, you can go back to this document and then you can also go back to the research that supports that claim. So all of those things are linked together. Okay, so we also have the assessments, which is very cool. There are 360 assessments, and they were developed by over 1,000 arts educators. So they are very relevant to the work that you are doing. You will absolutely be able to find assessments that already fold into what you are doing. I am going to pause and I really want to make sure that you understand the word assessment because sometimes when people look at the assessments, they think to themselves that it's like a lesson, and it's not. The assessment is a measurement of the student learning after you have taught them the things to be successful on that measurement. So, like we learned X, Y, and Z. During that, I provide formative assessment to the students to make sure they truly understand the concept because the idea of a strong assessment would be like, I know that this student knows where they're like, it shouldn't surprise you. Like how kids do on an actual assessment should not be a surprise. You should already know in the formative assessment leading up to that final assessment, your summative assessment, you should already have a good idea of what they actually know and what they're capable of. Sometimes things surprise you, and then you're like, "Ooh, I need to go back and I need to reteach this," because our goal is to make sure that those skills are strong with all of our students. We'll dive in, so don't worry, just giving you an overview. My suspicion is you may have to show student growth in learning, could be part of your evaluation system. Rebecca, is that probably the case? Yep, thumbs up. Okay, so there's an entire section on our website that deals with using assessments to measure student growth and to show educator effectiveness. So, in the state of Michigan, one thing that is cool is our Michigan Department of Education has worked with us throughout this process of building assessments, and these all are approved to be used for your student growth, which is really nice because you have the opportunity to choose what it is. It's not like an SAT test or a benchmark level test. You have some autonomy in what you're choosing to measure your students with, but they also have like that rubber stamp so you could go into an administrator and say these are valid. They were all field tested. I mean, they've gone through all of the vetting process. So it's not just like, oh, I made up this test and I can use it. They actually have research behind saying that this is like a valid use in your classroom. And Rebecca could probably support you with that if needed. There are 3 different methods, and you can dive deep on the website about how you can use them. Test and retest in the same grade, same school year. Test and retest across adjacent grade levels and adjacent years. Or method 3, the new old-fashioned way. So you can dive into that just a little bit. All of these things have links and also supporting videos. Speaking of the videos, we do have video modules to help you start using the assessment. So even after today, because it's very fire hose like, you want to go back and watch a video, it'll be like, this is how you could administer this, or you could fold it in. And it really should complement what you're already doing in your classroom. It shouldn't be something that's like totally different. I would recommend starting with something that supports your teaching practice that you're already engaging in. We also we have ongoing work. Every single school year, we are thinking about what do we need to do to grow, and we listen really careful to the arts educators in our regions and in our state and what their needs are. So one of the big needs that we found was they really wanted to do a better job of doing culturally responsive teaching, making sure that all kids had doors and windows, could see them reflected in the classroom practice, but also like learning about other friends in the world that like kind of that window looking into that their lives. So with that, we created Representation in Arts Education Matters. You have to vet the resource, but there is a list of contemporary artists in all of the disciplines that you can pull into your classroom. And it's a starting point of thinking about other artists that may not be traditional. I am of the age that we learned about Van Gogh, Picasso, the very traditional. And we didn't have an opportunity I think I learned about like one female artist for my whole K through 12 arts experience. So really broadening that work is an important thing that we can be doing in the classroom. So feel free to use. Okay, so we are going to dive into assessments. You guys ready? Thumbs up. Okay, I'm going to go through some slide decks and then we're going to kind of go outside of the slide deck and we're going to start looking at the website and learning how to click around and use those things. So, I told you that they were all developed as 360. I'm going to point out one thing. I put a note up here. We use some nomenclature, a T or an E. It stands for a task or an event. And to this day, I get it backwards in my head. But a task is completed over multiple class periods, so you likely can't do it in one setting. So even though it's an assessment, it can be done over multiple periods. And sometimes I think that contributes to people thinking it's a lesson plan. However, they will not be successful on the assessment if they have not learned the necessary things prior to the assessment. An event is something that is completed in one brief session. Think about a critique on a musical performance or on a visual artwork or a dance. All of those things can be done in one class period. So just when you see an E, like see here how you have VE, you're going to know that that's an event. If it was a T, it would be it would see like V. V stands for visual art, and then T. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and I'm going to do my best here to grab. Hmm, hold on just a second. I'm going to escape out for just a moment. I want to grab this link and get it to you. Hmm. Not working for me. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second, friends. Okay, we'll go the long way. Okay, I'm going to start by putting this in the chat box. This is our homepage. And I'm going to show you around real quick, and then I'm going to show you how to find the assessment that I was just trying to pull up. If you go to the K-12 resources, you see the performance assessments. Collaborative scoring, I'm not going to go into that today. It means like when two people grade the same thing and you talk about like whether or not a student is proficient. It's an extremely wonderful practice, but you really need to be like engaged in some of the basics before you go down that pathway. Your educator effectiveness, different resources for you. Here's that program review tool. So we had that question in the chat box. If you click this link, It will take you to the program review tool. You can even create an account. You can print off a paper version and you can go through. Um, there's a module over here as well. And let me see. Here's a written version of the program review tool. I'll give you just a brief preview. So you can see in student access, you're looking at things like the number of arts educators, if you're highly qualified, who's the primary arts instructor. I'm just scrolling really quick to give you an overview. The number of elementary students, high school, their class periods, proficiency, um, certification areas of arts education coordinators. Do you even have an arts ed coordinator? They're hard to find even in Michigan.
We have two,
Ooh, lucky, lucky, lucky. So jealous.
but
That's
they're in one
wonderful.
area. They're not spread out. They're in the two largest districts. That's it. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so we have an arts coordinator in one large district at an ISD to support like 25 different schools. Yes, they're few and far between. We do have some people that get like an hour release time. There are a few people like that. So, your arts education standards. I'm just going to scroll like down farther so you can see. Curriculum development, barriers to outside arts experiences, transportation costs, all of the different things. So this really helps you have some really great conversation about arts in your district. Okay, so hopping back over here. All right, so there's tons of different tabs to explore, but we're going to go into our assessments. I like this tab here. You can go directly to dance, music, theater, visual arts. I'm going to go to visual arts because the information that I had pulled up is in the visual arts. You can create a free account. Highly recommend creating a free account because when you do that, you can download the assessment and you can download a Microsoft Word version, which is 1,000% compatible with Google. And so, what I found myself doing when these were written, a lot of them were written in very like an SAT-ish style format, like very administrative. But as we've moved into the world of slide decks, I really liked to grab information and put them into my slide decks. And they are meant to be completely editable by you so that they really fit into your curriculum. So, for example, if the assessment referenced somebody like George O'Keeffe, but you had studied somebody completely different, you can just edit out the text and have it be the artist that you chose. So, or if you were doing something like traditional music and you wanted to change it into contemporary music piece or into jazz, you can do all of those things as well. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hope that my login is saved. Um, there we go. Oh, I'm not a robot. Oh, it really does not like that, does it? Yeah. Okay, I'll log in just a second. I'll give you work time first. Hold on, let me back up. Ooh, okay. Going into visual arts. All right. So I'm going to give you a second to do this. I'm going to show you first, and then I'll log in so I can show you how to download and how to edit. So you can search up here any keyword that you want. So if you're doing critique, you can put critique in there. If you're doing something modern, you can put that in. Um, you can choose your grade bands. You can choose in high school, they have level one, two, and three. That is because the national standards are written like that. Because, like, sometimes you can have a senior who's your first year art student. So it's level one, level two, level three. Level three is your highest in high school. It aligns with your national standards. And over here, you're going to see a lot of art standards that are related to Michigan, but you will be able to see that we have all of the national standards in here as well. So I'm going to choose grade 7. Nope, I'm just going to choose all grades. So all of these things are related to critique in some way, and you can see what those are. Once you do that, you can click on to the assessment. and it will let you know what this looks like. I'm going to sign in. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a second to, are we doing okay with time, Rebecca? Okay, I'm going to give you just a second. If you can go on your end and create an account, that will give you accessibility as well. And then I'm going to log in once I figure out what's wrong with my password. I should play like the Jeopardy soundtrack in the back. Use this one. Oh, I'm just struggling. I'm so sorry, friends.
I'm in. Do you want me to share my screen?
I might have to. So my account has had some funky things happening to it. So if you don't mind, that would be great.
Yeah.
My my emails got merged together and I thought this was resolved, but I was in earlier today and it's looking like it's doing the same thing. So thanks, Becca. Okay, so go to the performance assessments,
Visual arts.
visual arts. Yep. And then if you can go through and you can grab VT, I thought it would be helpful for everyone to look at the same one just to start with. Let's go to the VE 410, which is the mid-process self-evaluation.
BE 410.
Yep.
This one? Oh no, where?
VE.
Can I search? I can search, right?
Yep. Yep. So just do V period E 410. Yep.
Here we go.
Perfect. So if you can bring that up on your screen, and then if you don't mind popping the link into the chat box, that would be great. And let's go through the components together real quick. So, a mid-process self-evaluation would be you are in the middle of learning, and so you are going to have the students do an evaluation. I like this one because it can work with any type of discipline. This one is specifically written for the visual arts, but it's very transferable to anybody on the call. It's going to tell you right there whether it's approximately 50 minutes long. Can you go ahead and open up the Word version of this? It doesn't really matter. And I would go to the teacher booklet. The teacher booklet will have more information. Thank you. So you can see that it can be used in high school with level 1 and 2. Yep, keep scrolling. Wonderful. Okay, so on the very, like, kind of once you get past the copyright information, it is going to tell you the content standards that it aligns with. It will tell you the national core art standards there. So I heard that you guys are working on that. In Michigan, we're under the process of revising our standards. They are really, really old, and we're really waiting for the new national standards to be revised, and then we're hoping that we'll be able to adopt those. If you have not worked with the national core art standards, they are wonderful. If you just Google National Art Standards, you will find that information, but they are all related to the creative process. There are 11 anchor standards, and they are the same for music, dance, theater, and for visual art. And I love them because they really start with the basics of what art making looks like. And then you like dive deeper as you are aging, as you're growing older, right? So you're like, okay, here's the surface level. Now I have this deeper understanding. Now I have an even deeper understanding. But it's also great because when you have PLCs, a lot of times you might be the only art teacher, only music teacher, only theater teacher, and you can have conversation about, okay, like how is critique going in your classroom? How does a mid-process review work? What does that process look like? And is that going well? What else can we do? Are we preparing students? What's a piece of information that they're missing? So it's really nice to have some common conversations around those things. All right, so you could choose to do this paper pencil. You could print something like this right out. You can print off the teacher booklet for you, and you can print off student versions for the students. You can also translate this and take this into like a Google form if you use Google Classroom in your classroom, or you can put it in a slide deck. So whatever works best for you, you will find all of the bones you need for the assessment right in here. So it's going to give you instructions. Anything in black are like words that you would actually read out loud to students. Some of you have been in the classroom a long time and you've got a style and these words feel like robotic. That's okay. Change it up for whatever you need it to sound like for you. But we'll read through this first part together. So you should have a piece of artwork that you've been working on. Think about a piece of music. This could be a piece, they could have a recording of a piece of music they just did. You're in the middle of your work. Consider how you are doing. So they are not assessing a final piece. You are not assessing their work at this point. You are assessing their ability to assess the work. So that is part of the national standards. Are you able to reflect on your work in the middle of your doing something? Can you do it at the end? Can you do it in the middle? Can you think about what you might do differently? You can think about how that might apply to like the engineering design process, right? All of the different fields where that skill comes into play. All right, so today you're going to think cognitively. You may need to explain that word to some of your students. Hopefully you've already taught it at this point, but it might be helpful to refresh their memory. It means you're able to look back and evaluate your earlier thinking as well as your progress towards your goals. This awareness and evaluation is a key to part of the artistic creative process. So on pages 4 and 6, we'll look at those in just a minute. There are 9 questions. There's a multiple choice section, blah, 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 blah. Okay, go ahead. And they're going to have 25 minutes remaining to do this. All right, if you keep scrolling, you're going to get to the questions. There's a scoring teacher rubric. So you have a rubric right there. Again, if there's something that you don't think, like writing fluency, that is helpful if you have a district mandate that is looking for writing in your classroom, like across the curriculum. However, if that is not something that you are assessing, like in your grade book, if you are only like assessing that ability to be reflective, you might delete that out of the rubric. So you make that decision as a teacher, what works best with your teaching practice. Okay, keep going. I'm trying to get us to our questions. There is the artistic creative process so that they have that as a visual. This is a first multiple choice question. Standards when you're looking at multiple choice is you should have about 3 questions to prove that a response is valid, just as a heads up, but it'll give you some indication. Like if you see a student struggling there, you might know they would struggle with the other questions. But which of the following statements, closely aligns with you? Look at the creative process. What step best describes where you are? So they're looking at that visual and talking about where they are in that chart. What are you learning at that moment about your artwork? What connections are you making between other things? Are you able to envision your finished work? So you can see all of these questions, and you can also see how this would work in a variety of settings. And I'm going to pause and talk about that for just a minute. When I first started teaching, I taught in a very traditional way, much like I was taught when I was learning art. And I think that that's a safe place for a lot of us. As I grew as a teacher, I really started leaning more towards choice-based teaching, where kids had a lot of like what we were doing in the classroom did not look like a recipe at all. We did not have the same prompt, the same outcome. They weren't like variations of the same thing. Students made a lot of choices about the materials that they used, about what they were creating, about that final outcome. I will say, as a caveat, I recognize there's some music educators on this call as well. That can be a little bit more challenging to do. And I hear you, music friends, when you were asked to do like a performance at halftime for the football field, right? So, like, there are some arts teachers who have some expectations within their district, and they have some performances that they feel very judged on. I am sorry that that is the way education is. It is probably not the way education should be. But within those parameters, like knowing you have to do those at some point during the school year, like where are times that you could fit into your curriculum, times for students to really like compose music, to like do the things that make you love the field that you're in. So we do have some boxes, and I think, how do you step outside of those boxes as well? So we should be pretty close to the end of the assessment. Oh, the last page will be a score summary, and this is where you can write down your students' names and you can write down their scores, and then you can see how your students are doing with their proficiency. So it gives you like that big picture. A lot of you guys have grade books and so forth, a system that can help you do this as well. So don't feel like you have to use this. In some formal educator evaluations, you're required to submit something like this. It's already there for you electronically, so you can type it in and submit it to your administrator if you need to do something like that. But again, if you have a different way that you're pulling your data, that's totally fine. Okay, so in the chat box, I am going to have you write for just a second about like, well, we'll skip the project-based learning part. How do you think these assessments could support your teaching practice? So I know we looked at a visual art example, but I would like you to think about whatever content you teach in and how could that assessment like work into what you're already doing in the classroom? So go ahead and respond back to that prompt. And then do we have 5 minutes of playtime? Okay, we have 5 minutes of playtime. Okay, cool. Oops. Okay, I think you should be able to see my screen. Rebecca, thank you so much for taking us through the Maya website, and I have my homework for tonight cut out for me. Um, So, in our fun time, I would like everybody to look through the assessments and I would like you to just find probably one at this point because I'm sure Rebecca has a couple more updates for you, but just find one assessment that would align with what you're already teaching. So, like, you're not adding something new. It's like, oh, this would support work that I'm already doing. A visual art example would be like there's an assessment about identity. So it does tweak it just a little bit, but like for me, if I were to take out what I was already doing, this would maybe be a better assessment than what I was doing around identity. So you could look for something like that. And in every content area, there are assessments that align with like a portfolio review about like looking at one performance versus another performance and comparing what those might look like, about critique, about reading music, about interpreting, about thinking about communication. So these are all skills that align with those national standards but are very, I would say, I don't really like the word generic because they're directly related to that creative process, but they are things that are written in a framework style because they're meant to be melded into what you're already doing. So, like, kind of think about these as frameworks and also think about like what you have taught the students before so that they would be successful on the assessment that you're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and give you just a few minutes to look at those. And then I'm just going to have you like pop a little summary in the chat box. Like, this is the assessment that I found. Put the number if you don't mind, because someone else in this chat might really love the assessment that you found. And then just do a little summary. Like, I found this, I would use it in this way.
I do want to point out before it gets buried that Sam had said a few texts up that I found a test on the theater assessment page for the exact concepts that I was already looking for.
Yay! That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that out, both of you. They're like really cool. Like when you start diving into these, they're really cool. I will give you some just like maybe some little tips. Like, please don't leave these for a substitute teacher. Like, assessment for kids, it should be done when the classroom teacher is there, if at all possible. So, like, I know that this feels like it could be an easy thing to leave for a substitute teacher or when you're pulled out of the classroom, but like the kids will do better if you are there and providing that safe space and also guidance and questions that they might have throughout that assessment process. Do feel free to modify. So like modifying these are like 100% like approved. We have no issue with that. Like teaching is meant to be a craft. It's something that you work at, that you have ownership over. So if you need to modify, if you see a rubric and that does not align with where you are at, modify that rubric. If you need to replace a little bit of the content, like the bones are there, and then you want to make that work for you and for your students and what you're teaching in the classroom. Shonda, what do you think?
It has a lot of really good resources, and I'm thinking like, who is working on this? And I pulled up some of like the music ones, and I'm like, yes, these are practices that I did in my classroom that I would kind of assess really generally. And it's tricky when you're dealing with, I had 600 kids I was assessing, but I think it's so important to measure so it informs your teaching. Um, I've had lots of conversations with teachers, and sometimes they're like, yeah, some kids can do it and some kids can't. And I'm like, but what are you doing to support those kids if they can't get it right away? And what systems and structures do we have? Because if we want to say arts is just as important as every other content area, then we have to take ourselves just as seriously of tier two, tier three interventions, systems of support. And you can't do that if you're not doing really good assessments to measure where the students are at and then using that to inform your practices. So I think this is really great to have really clean assessments with those standards.
Yes. And Shonda, just to go off something you said, it can be really tricky if you have that number of students, right? But like you could do something like record the performance that you just did together as a group. And then you could even pair students into smaller groups to then work on a critique of the performance together and then go ahead and share a whole group. And then you could record that data pretty simply, like in a Google form, like the student either did or did not have the understanding. So there's some really fast ways you can do some assessment practices in some of those settings. You just might have to be a little creative and then like tweak them just a little bit. So that's where we give you like permission to modify them for whatever you need to have happen in the classroom. But I get 1,000 students at a time some of my semesters when I was at lower L, like I get it. Oh, Sharon, thank you so much. So Sharon is coming to us from a fifth grade general ed teacher, and I love that they are looking for some of them that are cross-curricular. We are working on updating the website too, where you will actually be able to see the assessments, and they'll have kind of like a dot next to them if they cross into other content areas like science or ELA or math. Those, which is great for general education teachers. Right now, you have to look just a little bit, but we will actually have that mapped out for you shortly. We're hoping probably by the end of this school year. Thanks. Yeah, Allison, that one was one of my favorites, the multiple clay sculptures. I loved it because it really lets students explore some different things. Okay, I'm going to advance my slide deck. Um, Share any thoughts you might have about the assessments, and also feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat. I'm happy to address anything, and I'll do them pretty quickly so that Rebecca has time to finish up the things she wants to cover with you. Um, but you can always reach out. Like my email is at the bottom of the mycreativepotential.org website, and you could always email me if you were like stuck on something, and I will do my best to respond back to you quickly. But if there are any like wonderings or curiosities or things that you're thinking about, I'm happy to go over those with you while I'm with you today. And I'm also always happy to come back if Rebecca needs me to. Sometimes like a technical support session is really helpful.